The porcelain mug didn't just fall. It flew. 1 second it was in Daniel's hand, steam curling from the rim, his knuckles white around the handle. The next second it was spinning through the air like a slow, deliberate weapon. I didn't even have time to flinch. The impact came fast. Hot liquid splashed across my cheek, dripping down my neck, soaking into the thin fabric of my blouse. My skin screamed from the burn. The mug shattered on the floor in an explosion of ceramic shards, scattering like teeth across the tiles. I froze, my breath trapped somewhere between my lungs and my throat. And Daniel, my husband of 7 years, didn't rush to me. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just stood there, tall, eerily calm, like a man who had simply set down his coffee on the table instead of hurling it at his wife's face. His voice, when it came, was low, steady, sharpened with something darker than anger. "Madison's coming later. You'll give her the money. Or you can get the hell out." Then the slam of the front door shook the walls. Frames rattled. Our wedding photo tilted sideways, the one where I was smiling at a man who promised to love and protect me. The irony was cruel. The photo clung to the wall harder than he clung to me. Hours earlier the morning light had spilled through the kitchen window, turning the cracked linoleum into a patchwork of gold. The smell of coffee used to mean comfort. Now it felt like a warning. Across the room, Daniel paced like a caged predator. His jaw clenched, muscles twitching under the scruff he never bothered shaving anymore. I didn't need him to speak, I already knew. We'd been here before. It started last night. At midnight, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't need to check the screen to know the name. Madison Clark. His sister. Madison's emergencies were never real emergencies. They were last-minute flights to Las Vegas, credit card debts that doubled overnight, handbags that cost more than my monthly salary. And Daniel, like clockwork, swooped in to rescue her. With our money. That buzzing phone was a trigger I could predict as surely as a storm on the horizon. "Madison just needs a little help," Daniel said now, his tone clipped, almost rehearsed. He wanted me to object. He wanted the fight. I didn't disappoint him. "No, Daniel." My voice was steady even though my stomach was tight. "We've done this too many times. We can't keep bailing her out." His nostrils flared. "She's family. So am I." The words landed like a rock thrown into still water. Ripples of tension spread instantly between us. "You don't get it," he snapped. "You don't have siblings. You don't know what family means." The insult was cheap, a line he'd used before, but it pierced differently this time. My grip tightened on my own mug to keep my hands from shaking. "I know what family doesn't mean," I shot back. "And it doesn't mean being someone's personal ATM every time they screw up." For a moment, silence. Then he moved toward me, slow, deliberate steps. His shadow stretched across the kitchen tiles, swallowing the morning light. I braced myself for the usual, a slammed door, a fist punched into drywall, the kind of violence that left scars on houses instead of skin. But this time he wanted more than fear. This time, he threw the mug. The sting on my skin was nothing compared to the realization that followed. This was who he was now. A man who didn't care if he hurt me. A man who could scorch me with coffee and still stand over me, detached, waiting for me to submit. And suddenly, staying felt worse than leaving. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. The contact list blurred through tears, names of people I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends I'd let fade away because Daniel didn't approve. Easier to stay quiet than to fight. Then I saw her name. Clara Mitchell. My best friend from college. The girl who'd stayed up with me until 3 a.m. dissecting poetry and cheap wine. Daniel never liked her. Too independent, too sharp-tongued. A bad influence, he'd called her. I hadn't spoken to Clara in months. Maybe a year. But my finger tapped her name anyway. The phone rang once. Twice. Then her voice, hoarse with sleep, but warm, familiar, alive. Liv. And in that single word, my nickname, spoken like no time had passed, I felt something I hadn't in years. Concern. Real concern. My throat closed. Words shook free like broken glass. "I need help." She didn't hesitate. I heard the sheets rustle as she sat up straight, her breathing change, alert. Where are you? What happened? The dam inside me broke. The fight. The burn. The ultimatum. The mug shattering like our marriage had just done the same. Get out, Clara ordered, her voice suddenly steel. Pack a bag and come here. Right now. I didn't argue. I just moved. The bedroom felt colder than usual, heavy with memories that no longer belonged to me. I yanked a suitcase from the closet and started shoving clothes inside, hands on autopilot. Enough for a few weeks. Maybe longer. At the back of the drawer, I found a showbox under a stack of sweaters. Emergency cash, small bills folded tight, hidden for years. For a rainy day. I never thought the storm would look like this. My eyes fell on my left hand. The ring gleamed back at me. For 7 years it had symbolized love, commitment, promises whispered in front of family and friends. Now it was just a shackle. I slid it off. The metal clinked against the dresser, hollow and final. I didn't look back when I stepped into the hallway. The kitchen floor was still littered with broken ceramic and coffee stains. He hadn't even cleaned it up. Good. Let him see it. Let him walk in and realize he'd gone too far. I heaved the suitcase into the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. For a long second, I stared at the house. The dark windows. The silence pressing against the walls. It didn't feel like home. It hadn't in a long time. I backed out of the driveway, every nerve braced for headlights in the rearview. But the street was empty, the world still asleep, unaware that my life had just collapsed, and maybe just begun again. Clara's porch light glowed like a lighthouse when I pulled into her driveway. The second I opened the car door, she was there, barefoot, hair tangled, but eyes sharp with fury. She wrapped me in a hug so tight it knocked the air out of me. You're safe now, she murmured into my hair. Her arms were warm, grounding, a shield against the chill of the night I'd left behind. I didn't mean to cry, but the weight of 6 years pressed down at once. The sob tore free, raw and jagged. Clara only held me tighter. When I finally pulled back, she cupped my face. Her thumb brushed the angry red mark on my cheek. Her eyes darkened with rage. We're calling a lawyer first thing in the morning. I nodded. No argument. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. The next morning came fast, a blur of sleepless hours and nerves that buzzed under my skin like static. Clara kept her promise. By noon I was sitting in a law office that smelled faintly of leather and coffee, clutching a cup of tea she'd forced into my hands. Across from me sat Amelia Grant, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm voice that didn't leave room for doubt. I told her everything, my words stumbling out like a confession I'd held for years. The fights, the money, the isolation. The way Daniel chipped at me until I felt like a ghost inside my own house. And then, finally, the thing I'd barely been able to admit even to myself, that he'd thrown a mug of scalding coffee at me, and I hadn't even been surprised. Amelia didn't flinch. She leaned forward, her tone steady but firm. What happened to you, Lila, is abuse. The word landed heavy in my chest, knocking the air from my lungs. I had known it, deep down, but hearing it spoken out loud was like staring into a mirror after years of avoiding my reflection. I nodded, my throat tight. I want out. Amelia nodded back without hesitation. Then let's start today. Within the hour the papers were moving. Divorce filed. Restraining order in progress. Bank accounts secured so he couldn't drain them before the ink dried. Clara squeezed my hand each time I signed, whispering, "It's real now. You're free." That night at her apartment, wrapped in a blanket on her couch, I stared at the wall in silence. Clara nudged me with a steaming mug of cocoa. You okay? I didn't lie. I don't know. The words felt raw, but they were the truth. Clara smiled softly. Then let's start small. She scrolled through her contacts. Emma's looking for help at her bookstore. It's not much, but it's something. A flicker of hope stirred in my chest, fragile and unfamiliar. Yeah, I whispered. Let's start there. The texts began soon after. At first, apologies. Lila, come home. I didn't mean it. You know I didn't. Please, baby, Just talk to me. I didn't reply. Then the tone shifted. You think you can just leave me? You owe me. If you don't come back, I'll find you. My stomach twisted each time his name lit up the screen, but I forced myself not to answer. Clara caught me staring at the phone one night, the fear I couldn't hide. She grabbed it from my hand and scrolled through, her lips pressed tight. That's it. We're calling Amelia. 3 nights later the headlights cut across the living room curtains. My body went rigid. Clara and I had been watching some mindless reality show, half a pizza box between us, when the rumble of Daniel's truck echoed in the driveway. I peeked through the curtain. He was there, broad shoulders rigid with fury, eyes scanning the house like a hunter. Madison was with him, arms crossed, her mouth twisted in irritation, as if my leaving had inconvenienced her. My pulse hammered. Clara already had Amelia on the line. Let them in, Amelia's calm voice instructed. The door burst open, Daniel first, Madison trailing behind like a shadow. His eyes locked onto mine, a mixture of rage and something I hadn't seen before, desperation. What the hell is this, Lila? He demanded. Madison rolled her eyes. God, Olivia, drama much? My name spat out of her mouth like a curse. I sat straighter, gripping the couch arm. You need to leave, Daniel. My voice was steadier than my body felt. He laughed, sharp and humorless. You're my wife. You don't get to just walk away. I already did. His jaw tightened, fists clenching. He took a step closer, but froze when another voice cut through. Not another move. Amelia strode into the room, a folder of papers in hand. She didn't look at him like he was dangerous, she looked at him like he was already beaten. I'm her attorney. These are your divorce papers. Consider yourself served. She placed the documents into his stunned hands. Silence fell thick and heavy. His face drained, then flushed crimson. You can't be serious. This is over, I said, calm, even. He stared at me, disbelief cracking into fury. After everything I've done for you? After everything I've given you? I met his gaze without flinching. Fear. Isolation. A life where I had to tiptoe around your moods. That's what you gave me. His hands twitched. For a moment I thought he'd lunge. Amelia's eyes never blinked. Any further threats, Mr. Clark, will be documented and used against you in court. Madison scoffed, flipping her hair. You're making a mistake, Lila. I turned to her, the words steady. No. The mistake was staying as long as I did. Daniel's breathing turned ragged, fury spilling out in every tremor of his body. You'll regret this. I swear you will. I shook my head. The only mistake was ever believing you were the man I married. For the first time, I saw it, the realization flickering in his eyes. He'd lost. Amelia stepped forward, her tone cool. You've overstayed your welcome. Leave. Daniel hesitated, then stormed out, Madison snapping at his heels. The door slammed, rattling the walls, and just like that, they were gone. My knees buckled, but Clara was there, catching me, her face fierce with pride. You did it, she whispered. Amelia packed up her folder with a nod. This is just the beginning. But you're free now. I pressed a hand to my chest, the weight lifting for the first time in 7 years. I could breathe. And I already knew, I would never regret this. The air in my new apartment smelled like fresh paint and freedom. It was nothing more than a 1-bedroom with creaky floors and windows that rattled when the wind picked up, but to me it felt like a palace. No shadows of Daniel lurking in the corners. No sound of his truck pulling into the driveway. No fear that a wrong word might set him off. Just silence. Beautiful, healing silence. Each morning I woke without dread. I put on clothes I wanted to wear, not the ones he'd approved. I made coffee just the way I liked it and sat by the window, watching the city slowly come alive. For the first time in years, I felt like the rhythm of life was mine. Clara kept her word about the bookstore. Emma, the owner, hired me almost immediately. The place smelled of old paper and ink, shelves stacked high with stories waiting to be discovered. My hands learned the simple joy of shelving books, chatting with customers, and breathing in that quiet atmosphere. It wasn't glamorous, but it was safe. Every evening, I left with a little more confidence stitched into me. Clara's family became my family. They insisted I join them for Sunday dinners, where laughter echoed louder than the clatter of silverware. It stunned me at first, the warmth, the unconditional acceptance. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that kind of love. One slow afternoon in the shop, I drifted through the aisles and let my fingers trail across familiar spines. A worn copy of The Awakening caught my eye. I pulled it down and flipped it open, the words leaping at me like they had been written for this very moment. I would give up the unessential, I would give my money, I would give my life, but I would not give myself. I closed the book, breath caught in my chest. Maybe this was my awakening too. That night, at the small desk in my apartment, I opened my laptop. For years the blank page had terrified me. Now it didn't look empty. It looked like possibility. My fingers hovered, then pressed down. Chapter 1. For the first time in so long, I wasn't writing for him. I was writing for me. The weeks turned into months, and the pieces of my life slowly began to fit together again. The bookstore became more than just a job, it was a sanctuary. Emma treated me with kindness, not pity, and each customer who smiled at me felt like proof that the world outside Daniel's shadow was bigger and brighter than I'd dared imagine. I was no longer the woman who flinched at the sound of a door slamming. I was someone who could breathe, laugh, and begin again. Clara never left my side. Her family pulled me deeper into their circle, and for the first time, Sunday dinners didn't feel like obligations but like celebrations. They asked about my day, they listened, they cared in a way that still left me stunned. And then one evening, Clara introduced me to someone new. His name was Michael. He was a widower, quiet but kind, with a son not much younger than my niece. Our paths crossed at a school event Clara had dragged me to, and from the start his eyes held something different. Not pity, not curiosity, but recognition. He knew what it was to lose and to rebuild. At first, I kept my distance. Love felt like a fire I couldn't risk touching again. But Michael never pushed. He was patient. He showed up with gentle gestures, coffee on mornings I worked the early shift, a book he thought I'd like, his son laughing with me over a shared joke in the aisles of the store. Slowly, the walls I'd built began to crack, not from pressure but from warmth. One night, after closing the shop, Michael walked me home. The streets were quiet, the air cool, and he said softly, "You don't have to be alone forever, Lila." I wanted to argue, to tell him I wasn't ready, but the truth was written in the steady beat of my heart. I wasn't the same woman Daniel had broken. I was stronger. I was free. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to love again. Daniel tried once more to claw his way back into my life. A letter this time, scrawled with promises of change, begging for another chance. I held it in my hands for a long time, the ink smudged where his frustration pressed too hard. Then I tore it in half, piece by piece, until it was nothing but scraps in the trash. There was no room for him in the life I'd fought so hard to create. As the seasons changed, so did I. The scars remained, faint reminders of where I'd been, but they no longer defined me. Standing in the bookstore one afternoon, sunlight streaming through the windows, I realized I wasn't just surviving, I was living. And I wasn't doing it for him, or even against him. I was doing it for me. When Michael reached for my hand, I let him hold it. When his son hugged me goodnight, I let myself believe that family could mean something good again. And as I sat at my desk later, writing the story of my awakening, I knew this was only the beginning.